Like when
Well, we had
Tom Theo was here
yeah.
for.
Where does that go?
Oshkosh.
I missed it. Where does that get put into?
It's an unclassified.
Unclassified?
It's
Okay.
in administrative services, so you'll be getting that tomorrow.
Yep, okay.
But think of, well, yeah, most of the stuff with Art Harrington is utility related, so, excuse me, that's
Okay.
charged directly to the utility. Oh, well, it's finance, okay. Trina will answer your questions tomorrow during finance. Mr. Fitzpatrick doesn't want to touch the, that's right, thank you.
Okay.
But Lynn does manage that. That unclassified one covers a lot of different things.
You mentioned, I think it was the last council meeting, you're losing your administrative assistant.
Lost her on Friday, so we
Okay.
are, actually, my previous assistant agreed to come back and cover in the interim.
Okay.
So Carol came back, so I
Is-
cannot be that bad, and
Is this an overworked, underpaid situation, or?
she was commuting from Green Bay, and an attorney in Green Bay offered her a position. So,
But as far as getting qualified staff, you're not concerned about that? Personally, I look at that, and I'm not sure if it's, your assistant is same as kind of the assistants in the DA's office, but it looks a little underpaid, I don't know. I mean, do they type up legals or briefs or any of that stuff for you?
Amber did do more of that. Amber was a paralegal, and so she was doing more of that than the previous
Would you think
legal
that
secretary.
that position is more of a paralegal than
Just
just?
starting to go through applications, actually. We closed, our deadline was yesterday, and we put in for a paralegal again, that's preferred, or, an experience. So we do have probably at least half a dozen that are look qualified, that we plan to interview, so I'm hopeful.
Well, I
we
guess my
get that.
question is that 45,000 enough for a paralegal? Or is it not really enough, and we're getting them because they'll use it as stepping, as we said earlier, a couple other things, it's a stepping stone, and they're gone?
Something else.
Or do we need to be, I mean, is HR looking at what, I mean, I don't believe we have paralegal in our job, in any of our salary compensation stuff, do we?
No, we don't.
No.
There's a lot of reasons, none of which have to do with paralegal, that we lost Amber. That was more of a.
No, I understand that, but I'm just thinking, if we're going in that direction, it's more than just someone answering the phone and forwarding, phone calls or sending certain things, but she's doing more of a paralegal, then do we need to have a salary that's commensurate to a paralegal?
We could, but that's a personnel issue that we'll look
And,
at.
and at this point, I mean, I did go through, and I have like at least a half a dozen that look pretty good. We'll interview and go through them a little closer, but right now, I'm not that concerned about it, but
Administrative assistants are exclusively limited to direct administrative support to each department head. Each department head has an administrative assistant. So if it came different, that things have evolved, that we should look at a reclassification, we could do that. But so far,
I mean, I know that's not really our role, but I'm just making sure that if we're expanding her office with this inspection services and that we're getting the right person and being able to keep and retain.
I think it's not only that, I think that it's actually a valid point, because when you compare issues that we were dealing with, say 5.5 years ago, to what we're dealing with now, I mean, we've had some things come about that literally are due to nothing we've done. Like, say, for instance, like...
well, and kind of related to that, I'm going to be honest, my concern is more for the attorneys. We're still responsible for it. We still take the responsibility. We still have to have our hands on it. A paralegal assists us, but the things we're dealing with are more complicated. I'm more concerned about hanging on to my assistant and bringing Brad in, bringing in that kind of quality of attorney as assistants for the office, more so than the paralegal position.
that'll trail it. But
Yep.
But I would agree with Lynn that it's the legal support that we have. We have a good situation with Brad.
But I think that's been, I think, what came up last year, and then just throughout this year again. Does Lynn's office have the support in whatever capacity, whether attorneys or whoever the assistant is hire, because it's so different than what came on 5.5 years ago. Like I said, we're encountering legal issues that are really
Much more complex these
exactly
days.
And we're still requiring you to upgrade city codes and
Yep.
and going over, all those things that, yeah.
That's why part of Lynn's emphasis has been training departments to kind of get them to do things that that don't always have to be done by the attorney, but there's legal implications.
Or to
if you don't do it
recognize things that they do need us for. So if we can train them to recognize the issues and know when they need to come to us, that's a help too, because otherwise it gets too far down the line and it's harder to deal with for us as well. So training has been a real focus. But
Okay.
And it's little things, but they're important things, purchasing and purchasing probably.
purchasing contracts.
Contracts, we
Yep,
got.
contract
the
administration
convention
and
center, we
contract
got the,
negotiation.
brand, we got other things that we have, so.
But I think the training has been well received by the staff as well.
All right.
And I think the move with Brad is a good interim move, but your point's well taken. Down the road, you want to have Lynn do a study on comparables, she probably already has it in her desk. So, we know that compared to others, we're understaffed. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need some of those specialty attorneys for some of those things, because those require, if we want to win those things, we want to have a specialist on that. Well, you do pay a lot of money on the per hour rate, but on the back end, you get quality service.
And I'm going to have to plug my staff. We're understaffed, but we have very, very good people. Dave is very experienced, very knowledgeable, works hard. Brad brings a level to the prosecution and now into this new area, if we can bring him in, that's very high quality. So even if we're understaffed, we're holding our own just because we were able to get such good quality people, so, which is really, really important, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now you're only 5 minutes.
That's because we asked a couple of questions.
And every 4 years, our city clerk loves to come and talk to you because her budget plummets. Although the stress level at this point, it kind of cancels that out.
Lines today.
We did have lines.
Yeah, well, it was the first day of early voting, so I'll let Pam talk about that, because we've been up here. But there's two budgets. One begins on
41.
page 41, and that's the general clerk's budget, not the election. So you don't see a lot of movement up and down with this budget, because this is pretty much the traditional clerk functions, non-election.
Wrong, yes.
So it's all the liquor licensing, the records,
Special assessment.
special assessments. You can see the volume is up in terms of special assessments, and Pam's gotten those out because Public Works got them to you.
Yes. Yes, we're doing good in that area.
Between primary and general election, they got it in for Pam, so that helped a lot. It's really more, do you have any questions? If not, we can talk elections, which Pam loves to talk about.
Really? No.
Well, just one quick question on the advertising. I know for years we were, not only us, but mandated that you had to use your local newspaper for all sorts of stuff. But our local newspapers are sort of disappearing. Does the state still require us to use, how do we have to, how do we have to do it now?
We still need to publish in the paper, but we have condensed it, because if you see at the ordinances, then it's the shorter version that we do instead of the entire ordinance now.
So we're saving money there.
We're saving money.
So the newspapers still get a little bit of an ad, but it's a truncated version.
Yeah, nothing compared to what they used to.
With that, the next one is the elections budget, which is obviously going down. The new equipment, it's working well?
It's working well. Overall, I hear positive comments from the voters. It's a positive. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. I thought it worked out well.
Pam has room over at the building over on Sawyer to do testing of equipment, which makes it a little more, it removes it from, literally, she was testing equipment in the hallway where people are running back and forth. Now they can get away.
And focus on it, and the security over there is, it's in a room, and I don't have to worry about it being knocked over or anything like that.
I think it helps on election day, too. It keeps things
It does.
flowing. But that's, don't want to undersell the importance of what the clerk does. Clerk performs a very important function.
On the positive, today we had 314 voters.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know there was a little pushback because we didn't start as early. You get any complaints about that, or we're ready to roll?
A couple comments why we didn't start earlier, and, we explained the facility accommodations that we had to adjust to, but they seemed okay. Just a couple, though. Overall, I have to say the voters were very pleasant and thanked us because we have additional staff helping us. So they were very appreciative.
Pam, one question, you've got election record management. It seems everything is going down. Registered voters, absentee, early voters.
Let me get there.
That's page
44.
44 at the bottom.
Doesn't include 2016.
That's
Yeah.
last year. And
We're always a year behind on the performance measures. We only do actuals on those, so we don't show the 2016 numbers. We just show actual performance.
And the state purges the list and things like that, so
Okay,
that always
okay.
brings it down. And after 2016, those numbers will drum.
So gubernatorial in 14, and the numbers for 16 will be,
Quite
I don't know
high.
if double, but they'll be
Still high.
significant,
They'll be high.
noticeably higher, yeah. And then there's just little old municipal elections in 2017.
It'll be the sleeper year, right?
Never know. You never know.
That's it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Oh, I will.
We did end early, but if you have any thoughts about how you want to deal with the capital projects, we're going to have as full a day tomorrow. Public Works is clearly the monster when it comes to the capital improvements program. You'll be able to get through everybody else's capital improvements tomorrow within their budgets without a problem. I mean, they're just not as substantial. The second highest is probably community development. The third highest is parks. November 2nd, which is a Wednesday, we do have a 5 to 7 p.m. time slot set aside for a third budget work session.
Well, the first hour we could do that, and then the second hour could be additions, corrections, deletions,
I mean, I think,
so that it's really pretty much done for the public hearing. Because we shouldn't really make any changes after the public hearing. Should we? I mean, we can
As a
the night
result of
out
the public hearing,
approve the
yeah.
budget, but we do that, but
Well, I think
I mean-
that was my point this morning, was to try to
avoid that.
that so that, we're not scrambling and not.
I mean, we may have to do a resolution or two on the 22nd for something that we agreed to or approved, but, is it any different than when we change the resolution and then we have to have public comment? If we change something after we've had our public hearing, would we technically need to have another public hearing?
typically, what we've done and what we can continue to do is, we have that meeting on the 2nd. We can finish up Public Works CIPs, and then get some input from you. Based on that input, we can give you something on the weekend of the 4th.
Yeah, the scenario sheet.
Here's where we are so far.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you want to have public input. You want to,
Right.
yeah, and something may trigger something else in your mind that you want to do something else, and then we can put out yet another one on the 11th, the weekend of the 11th. Then you've got that to work off of and then the following week, give us whatever else comes to mind. Yeah, you always have other changes if you want to, but the earlier we do it, the better we can put that together, and because that expenditure restraint cap is rock solid. You can't penetrate that, so we have to figure out how we're going to do that, and that's where the council can give us input.
And I'm going to be out from the 8th through the 16th. So you and I
So on the
talked about
second-
that.
So on the second, there's your,
That's my last
I think-
opportunity, because I won't be able to get anything over that weekend. You're talking about the 11th? Getting
well, that's a
sent,
Friday. We would send that in the package, just to
Right.
say, you got anything else? So when you get back on the 16th,
17th, yeah.
17th,
yeah.
then you'll have an opportunity to take a look and say, hey, Mark, Trina, I see something else.
Okay.
The idea is that when you're on the 22nd for the approval, that we have as the menu for you to look at and consider. And the idea is to give everybody their shot at whatever they want to do, so that council can go through and say, all right, let's discuss these ones, or maybe you've already discussed them.
And is there a
previous
specific
meeting.
format that we do this in, that we submit these proposals or changes, or, I mean,
Usually what happens is you call or email us.
Yep.
If we have questions to help you tighten it up,
yep,
you know, do you mean this, or do you want to, it's not trying to persuade you or dissuade you. That eventually comes to the seven of you, but more about making sure it's understandable for everybody. That's what we'll try to work with you on.
okay.
Because ultimately, these are the ultimate policy decisions for you to make as council members. So I don't want to take away that fun. That's the fun of your job.
Well, it's like, let's go back to the enhancement page for just a
Right,
minute.
sure.
We want to add these positions. What do we got to take away to add these
Yeah, we don't
positions, and
have
how does it
anything to
affect
work
the
with,
levy?
yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that our original idea was the whole health insurance deductible thing was going to
Right.
take it.
But you don't have that. But,
No.
so I guess I kind of like the CIP in a way. Is there a priority that, these, we really need to add these, but if we do, what are we going to take away? Because if you're going to add a position, odds are we're going to probably have to eliminate a position to add a position, because of the fact that you gave us a balanced budget without these in there. So we got to take something away to add something.
But we can't take anything out of CIP unless it's,
At $1 million.
Million,
Where
yeah.
is that at, Trina? So you,
That
I
is,
want you to
believe
know where
it's
it's at.
Finance, let me make sure. 'Cause I already looked at it.
Because and I've heard this for 7 years now, for everything you add or subtract, that affects the levy and the tax rate. So
Right, and I don't want to dismiss
Page
That's-
a
30.
pretty sizable increase in the levy too, and that
So
makes me
the
wince.
detail of how that breaks out is on page 32. So those would be your CIP items that we have funded with the levy contribution.
So those are things you can take a look at. Those are
That could be their money if that grant comes through.
yeah. So those are the ones available to you. Trina was pointing out the self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA. We've been trying to get a grant, but we need these, whether we get a grant or not. I'd love to be able to report to you we got a grant, but we can't make that assumption just yet.
is that the fire department? I mean,
Fire.
that's not the dive team stuff.
No, this is the ones
What
that
they
go in the
wear when
smoke.
they go in the smoke.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is the,
Yes.
and you have to replace those in one overall area, and Tim can explain that, because in terms of maintaining those.
No, right here.
what are these contingencies down below?
They are just that. They are contingencies for any kind of major vehicle or any other project contingency, to the degree that any project, and when I say any project, I literally mean any capital project, we want to have some money available in case something goes up. And so we budgeted for that. There's two stories to tell. One is, it's good to have cash in for a capital project. It's good to have cash for a contingency, because then you're not borrowing more. With that said, if we drop it and then we want to restore it, that's the tough part. But you have discretion there. So so the balancing act that I want to impress upon you is that $1 million is a drop in the bucket in terms of putting cash into capital, but you can do it. It's just that the following year, then when you want to backfill it, you're going to have an expenditure restraint issue, because to restore it, that's the first money that goes against expenditure restraint before you do any raises or anything like that. And that's the tough part of this. But it is legit, it is not committed to anything at this time, and that's,
But we couldn't, like, for example, here, shave off, 5, 10, 15, from various things. It's kind of an all or nothing on these in
Yes.
order to.
I would encourage you to keep them whole, because if you shave off some, then they're in here by project estimates or estimated project costs. So if you shave something off, then we could not have enough to do the entire project. So I would look at them as whole, keep them whole by line item.
You're recommending err on the high side for contingency?
Well, what Mark is saying is, say for instance,
the SCBA is the first one. I want to make sure that we got our, because we've been
Yeah.
trying to, through code, talk to each other, but I think we need to just talk. That contingency down at the bottom, isn't that for if we don't get the grant?
if we don't get the grant.
So if we get the grant, we got 175, and that's real money, that's not,
When do we know that?
hold that question for Mr. Franz tomorrow.
Okay.
That'll be the one, because that's a big deal, but we know, based on what Tim and the staff said, that we cannot wait on those, we got to get them.
So let's just say, let's just assume the worst, we're not getting the grant. We take the contingency money, we purchase that, and then, as we know, and has happened at least 2 times that I remember over the last, how many budget cycles, we've had something significant, like, go out. Like, when we look at, say, like, the water treatment plant, or I think there was something like with the Grand or the library, I can't even remember. But it was something where we anticipated it would go in the CIP like the next year or the year after, but then it just
Dies
totally,
early.
yeah, like totally failed, and it's expensive. Like I think one thing was like $300,000 or $400,000. Then what?
This is when we go to this. This is, we go to those things.
Like the
We open
Jefferson.
something up, it looks worse than it was. Think of a roof project,
That's what I'm saying. I can't remember specifically what they were, but I remember like the dollar amount was like where it took your breath away.
Before the 11.4 million directive from council, what we would have done is something like that came up, well, we'll just borrow a little more. But the whole idea is we want to stay on that 11.4 diet, and the only way we do that is we don't go back at it. So this, if something unforeseen happens, there's your opportunities to take a look at those things.
So any of these then are up for grabs then at that point.
Trina, was the major vehicle replacement, aside from the one for like CN, is that to take care of some CNG potential?
Nope.
What is this one for? Help me out. We got to help the council.
Let me find the correct wording. So so we had a piece of equipment that 2 different departments each wanted their own piece of equipment. We proposed a community share, and we didn't get full buy-in for the community share concept. And so we said,
Oh, that's right.
then we won't share, and it will become contingency.
So go play nice, come back with a piece of equipment that everybody can borrow for. Thank you. Now, you know what? That's the type of stuff we're trying to get the departments to work more closely. There was a question earlier about the roundabouts, and it's like, why? It makes sense for landscapers to do landscaping, and it makes sense for pavers to do paving in the cemetery, and that's been okay. That goes, not even discussed. But similar departments, like, well, we need it for this, and we need it for that. And I always use the example of the orange. And Steve wants the orange for the rind to do a nice orange zest, and you want the orange for some juice. We only need one orange to do both those things. So let's go find something like an orange that will make it work for everybody. It's a little tougher. It's just, but
It happens.
so thank you. I think it's good they have these out there. The other one, and the other project, that's
The
for
other
unforeseen.
one was unforeseen. The one thing I would remind you is we've kind of touched on it a little. It's very important we maintain our general fund balance right now. That's our only other source, your example of what if there's an emergency. We really do not want to be tapping our fund balance at this point. We need to keep that as reserved and as protected as we can the next couple of years to transition from that TIF 7 closure. So it's not allocated, but that is your emergency before we have to go to the general fund.
That affects our Moody's rating if we tap into that, because we're not prepared for an emergency.
So that concludes our first day.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent job. We convene at 8 o'clock.